This is a postcast edition of the Locked On Jets podcast. I'm John B. from gangreennation.com, filling in for Chris Schubert. If you're a fan of the channel, you may know that Chris usually handles our postcast episodes, which take place immediately after Jets games. Again, I'm filling in for him. I'm the regular host on the channel, so if you're a fan of Locked On Jets, you probably know me. I'm John B. from gangreennation.com, and we're here to recap just an unbelievably bad Jets performance as they were defeated by the Arizona Cardinals 31-6. I'm not sure the word has been invented yet to describe how bad this performance was by the New York Jets. I was going to say words like abysmal. It was worse than abysmal. I was going to say horrendous. It was worse than horrendous. It was beyond embarrassing. We may need to invent a new word in the English language to describe how bad this was. And part of it goes back to what the Jets entered this game playing like, because last week against the Houston Texans, they played a great second half. And it's not just that they played a great second half, which it may have been their best half of the season. After the game, there was a lot of chest pounding from this football team. There was a lot of declarations about how this was going to turn the season around. If you look at the schedule going forward, we can turn this around. The schedule is not as tough. Well, they ran into an Arizona Cardinals team that completely embarrassed them in this football game. And it goes beyond the score, which was bad enough, 31-6. It goes beyond how bad the performances were. This team, and I am not one to question effort. I try and be very careful with that because I never played the game. I know these are professionals. I know that what you put on the film is your resume going forward. I understand all that. So I am very, very hesitant to question effort. But if you watch that game, I don't know how you can tell me that team played with any effort at all. That team played with zero heart. Again, I'm not one to question heart because I've never made it to the NFL. To make it to the NFL, you have to be a very dedicated player. I mean, you have to work so hard. You have to have so much passion for the game. But that team quit. If you watch that game, that team played with zero effort. And after hearing for an entire week about how our season's on the line, about how we finally figured things out against Houston, to watch that team just go down without a fight. I mean, how many missed tackles were there? I'm really going to be interested. I'm sure PFF will have this after the game, and we'll get to it on our regular Monday show. How many missed tackles? It felt like every single play on defense, the Jets were missing tackles. It was unbelievable how bad they were. On the offensive side of the ball, I mean, who showed up? Nobody showed up. I mean, I couldn't get over Jeff Ulbrich at halftime talking about how happy he was with the way the offense played. Now, they did put together a couple long scoring drives, but they did not finish. This was just so bad. And, you know, early in the game, the Jets fell behind, and I still felt like, okay, maybe they could come back, which, you know, shows that I had too much optimism in this team. I had too much hope in this team. But even in the early stages of this game, where I felt like they could come back, because I didn't think Arizona's defense was that good, and I still don't think Arizona's defense was that good. I think it was just the Jets' offense was that bad. Even though I felt like there was a possibility the Jets could win this game, my hopes for the season were not increased at all, because you can't keep playing like this. The Jets every single week come out flat in the first half. Every single week you see this team go out there and stink in the first half. And, you know, last week they were lucky to not be down big against Houston. They were fortunate Quentin Williams made a couple timely plays and the Texans messed a couple things up, because otherwise that game could have gone the way of the Arizona game. The team that we saw in the second half against the Houston Texans unequivocally does not represent the real 2024 Jets. This team represents the 2024 Jets, because this is a team that showed you nothing. This is a team that's a collection of players. Yeah, they got a bunch of big names, but it's a bunch of big names who all look like they're out there for themselves. It's a bunch of big names who are going out there looking like they're just trying to collect a paycheck. They're just trying to get to the end of the season so they can cash in. I mean, who played well in this game? Again, the season's on the line. I mean, I know the Jets didn't really have a great shot going into this game, but they get a victory after the way things broke in the afternoon. Most notably, the Denver Broncos losing a game they should have won in Kansas City because the Chiefs block a field goal as time expires, which should have been a chip shot field goal. If the Jets had won this game, they would have been a game out of the final playoff spot. Now it's not just that they're 2 games out of the final playoff spot and they also lose the tiebreaker to Denver. It's like, how can you have any faith in this team going forward? Because this team just looked like it didn't care. This team went out there, failed to execute, and it just didn't seem like there was no passion on the field. And I would never accuse a team of doing something like this. But that team laid down. And this sounds crazy. And I try not to be the hot take guy on this podcast. But is there any reason Jeff Ulbrich should be employed after this game? Like, what is the point of Jeff Ulbrich being the coach of this team? I'm not sure a team's ever fired an interim coach before, but it would be justified here. Because this guy, it's not just that he didn't have this team prepared to play. It's that the team didn't care. And he kept saying, I said at halftime, this is not who we are. Well, who are you then? Because this is what your teams looked like for most of the year. This was the Jets were talking like they had this easy schedule coming up. They said, we got past the tough schedule. Once we get that win against Houston, we'll get on a roll. It's not just, this isn't like you lost a hard fought game against a team leading its division, a team that was playing very good football entering this game. You just rolled over. You acted like you didn't care. You acted like it's another week before we check another week off the calendar before we get to the end of the season. And if you don't go out there and play with passion, if you don't go out there and act like you care at all, we can't analyze anything else here, because there's no way the Jets could go out and play like that and expect to win the game. There's no way the Jets could go out and play like that and expect to even be competitive. The complete lack of discipline. And look, I really think Ulbrich should be fired after this game. And I don't know that anybody's ever called for the firing of an interim coach before. And I try and be really level-headed about this stuff. I'm not one of these people who fire. If you're new to the show, I'm not one of these people who every single week is calling for the coach to be fired because the Jets lose a game or because somebody messes up. This coaching is just unbelievably bad. But on some level, it has to go to the players. Because, look, I think all of the proclamations before the season about how this was a top 5, top 10 roster, they have proven to not be very justified. This team is not nearly as talented as we hoped it would be heading into the season. And part of the reason I say that is because you had a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who you were hoping would be a top-end quarterback, who I think at this point you have to say is just washed up. Like, Aaron Rodgers is not going to get better from this point. This is who Aaron Rodgers is, unfortunately. Hassan Reddick, heading into the season, at least before his holdout, you thought we'd have a star pass rusher. He hasn't really shown up. Mike Williams is gone. Mike Williams is off in Pittsburgh, and as soon as he leaves the Jets, he's catching game-winning touchdown passes. But he didn't produce here. Maybe it was Rodgers. I don't know. But the bottom line is that this team is Tyron Smith, who left the game with an injury after getting beaten a couple times for big hits on Rodgers. This team had a bunch of big names. It's not as talented as we thought it was, but the team is more talented than 3-7. And some of that goes to coaching. I'm not going to let the coaching off the hook. I did not let the coaching off the hook. I just told you, as crazy as it sounds, I would fire Jeff Ulbrich. I know it won't turn the season around. I know it won't make a difference. Firing Robert Saleh obviously did not make a difference. Team's been worse with Ulbrich as the head coach than Saleh. But I just don't know how you can keep going with Ulbrich with the team playing like this, with a coach who just puts a roster out on the field that doesn't act like it cares. But it's not all coaching. I mean, you have to show some pride professionally as a football team. You have to show some pride as a professional football player. You have to act like you care, because this is your video resume. And I saw a bunch of guys on the field who just acted like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's unbelievable. This is the least professional. This team is just so unprofessional in everything it does to approaching a game. And we've seen this all season long with a handful of exceptions. Week 3 against New England, the first 29 minutes against Pittsburgh, the second half last week, maybe the second half against Minnesota, even though they lost. Outside of that, this is just a team that completely lacks any sort of professionalism, a team that lacks any sort of pride. I hate analyzing like this, because I think like 99 times out of 100, when somebody says this, they're just going into cliches because they don't really have anything to add. This is the one case where it's true. This team acts like it doesn't care. This team acts like it's 53 guys who are just cashing paychecks. 53 guys who are waiting to the offseason to get their next payday. Nobody's showing up. An utterly pathetic performance. The Jets owe us all an apology for wasting 3 hours of our time in this game, because that's what they did. They did not respect their fans in this performance. This was a disgraceful performance. I keep using, and that's underselling, because I used the word disgraceful a few weeks back. It's beyond disgraceful. We're going to need to invent a new word. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about why this game in many ways was a microcosm of what we've seen all season long. And it's indicative of many of the problems the team has. And we'll talk about what some of those problems are, continuing here on this postcast edition of Locked On Jets. This episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan is not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and agonizing second overtime, or the New York Jets in 2024. And that's why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made for super fans just like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave. We see you. The Jets could sure use some 5-hour energy. Maybe it would wake them up. Maybe it'd allow them to play with a little bit of passion. Well, 5-hour energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Maybe not a player for the New York Jets, but being a fan sure does. So whether you're prepping for the next tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. And that's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to help keep you fueled through the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5-hour energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. This episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So much for making Locked On Jets your first listen every day. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. And today we have a postcast as the New York Jets were completely embarrassed by the Arizona Cardinals, 31-6. Look, it's not even debatable at this point. The New York Jets are a terrible football team. We had the 1 week reprieve last week against the Houston Texans. And look, we all hoped that was part of a turnaround. Maybe it was the first step, but I think we all knew deep down that this team was in deep trouble at 3-6. It was not likely to come back all the way to be able to post a successful season. And a lot of that was just due to the way the team had played. The second half of the game against Houston last week was the exception. It was what we hoped would be the way the team would play regularly through the season, but it was a rare instance where this looked like a quality football team. Through much of the season, the Jets have looked really bad, and this was their worst performance of the season. In many ways, this was kind of a microcosm of the season because there were just a lot of plays that bad teams make. And there were a few plays that good teams make. I mean, how many times did you see guys just show a complete lack of discipline in the run game? We always talk about how the Jets are a bad run defense, and somehow statistically they're still pretty decent against the run. At least they were heading into this game. But we know the Jets are a really bad run defense, and part of it's just how undisciplined they are. I mean, how many guys are chasing sacks by flying up the field and leaving their gaps wide open? Saw that happen over and over. Javon Kinlaw was one of the biggest culprits. Javon Kinlaw, who also committed a couple penalties in the first half of this game. I mean, this signing has been a complete bust, but he's not the only culprit. There were so many key moments in this game when I watched them that I said, you know what, that's a microcosm of the 2024 Jets. If you want to know what the 2024 New York Jets are about, you should watch that play. I mean, there was one where the Jets were down in the first half of this game. It was the Cardinals' third possession. They'd gone straight down the field for 2 touchdowns on the first 2 series of the game, and they averaged 8.3 yards per play on those first 2 series. The first touchdown was set up by a long catch and run by James Conner on a play where it was vintage Jets, where they fake the play right. Everybody flies out of position. They throw it back left to James Conner, and they Jets miss a couple tackles, and Conner gets all the way to the 1 yard line. I mean, that's vintage Jets just being completely undisciplined. Again, Kinlaw flying up the field, committing penalties. But after those first 2 drives, Jets had a shot to get off the field on third down, and Kyler Murray hits Trey McBride. And Sauce Gardner looks like he has him wrapped up. I'm watching this game with my father, and we both yell out, "Good job, Sauce," because we think he's tackled. Like, there's no way McBride can break this tackle. And McBride breaks the tackle somehow. Sauce Gardner is having an awful season. We know Sauce can't tackle, but that was like that tackle was made, and somehow he missed it. I don't know how to describe it other than he made the tackle, then he missed it. If you watched it, you know what I'm talking about. That's the type of play bad teams make. Good teams good teams finish the tackle. Later in the sequence, Quincy Williams comes off the edge, flying in, completely untouched. The Jets completely fool the Cardinals with their defensive call. He gets a big sack. Kyler Murray fumbles. It's a miracle Kyler Murray was able to recover the fumble. And I'm sitting there saying, like, okay, finally, that's the play that's going to get us going. That's the play that's going to change the game. What happens? The Jets allow the Cardinals to pick up the first down after the sack, after they end up behind the sticks. Just a couple plays, hit a couple passes, and you're in business. This is the way this Jets season's gone, where they just can't get anything right. They can't get anything going. There was another play. It was right before the half, and the Jets caught a huge break right before the half. And the reason I say that is the score was 21-6 Arizona. And the Cardinals essentially decided we just want to get a field goal. We don't want a touchdown. That's the way this game was going. Arizona just said, we don't want a touchdown. If Arizona had tried to get a touchdown, they would have gotten one. But the way they managed the clock, they were clearly settling for a field goal. And there's this one play, as much as I've talked about the other plays, there's this one play that I can't get out of my mind, and it wasn't the biggest play of the game. Again, it just showed the level of fight. It showed the level of football savvy this team has. It was by a good player. It was Michael Carter II. And there was a completion the Cardinals had that was near the sideline. It was an 11-yard completion to Michael Wilson. It got Arizona to the Jets 29, so it kind of got them into field goal range. It wasn't that Carter played horrible coverage. It's that he had a chance to tackle Wilson inbounds, which would have forced the Cardinals to burn their last timeouts. And somehow he just showed no fight. He let Wilson get to the sideline and get out of bounds, which helped the Cardinals out because they gave them an extra timeout, which they were able to utilize and kick a field goal for the half to make it 24-6. And that was pretty much it. That play, as much as all these other plays summarize the 2024 Jets, that play really stuck out to me. It was not the worst play of the game for the Jets. I mean, you have a large selection of choices if you wanted to come up with the worst play of the game for the Jets. But to me, that's the play that sums up this team, where there's something there to be made. It's just a little thing. You gave up a completion, fine. You got beat. It happens. But then you make it worse because you can't do the basic thing. You can't tackle the guy inbounds, even though you have an opportunity to do it. Again, the Jets may be more talented than the record shows, but this is a 3-7 football team for a reason. And at some point, it's not all on the coaches. It's partially on the coaches. Look, I think Jeff Ulbricht's clearly in over his head right now. I think the Jets put him in a really tough position, expecting a guy who's been a head coach for all of one Senior Bowl to fix this thing midstream, especially with all the personalities you've got at play, with all the dynamics you have at play. The fact the team just hasn't looked very good. But this is a team that deserves to be 3-7 right now. It's not like you look back on this and say, this team really deserves to be better. This team's played horrible football for most of the season. It's a collection of players. It's not a team. It's a situation where the sum of the whole is worth less than the sum of the parts. This is just a dreadful, dreadful football team. I don't know any other way to better articulate this, because you just see these plays that professional football players ought to be able to make. It's not so much that stars should be able to make these plays. These are plays like you'd expect any professional to make, and the Jets can't do it. Look, give Kyler Murray credit. Kyler Murray was phenomenal in this game, and the Jets would have had a tough time beating Arizona, even if they had played well, because Kyler Murray was so spot on. I mean, a couple of the throws you couldn't get upset with the Jets for, because he just put the ball on the money where it needed to be. But there were also a lot of plays where the Jets couldn't get out of their own way. And we listed some of the big ones, but just the mundane. How many missed tackles did the Jets have? I mean, how many times did Cardinals offensive players weave through Jets defenders? Throw one move on him, and the guy lunges at your legs and misses. This is it's a team that's not good on any level. The players are not good. The players are overrated. The coaching's bad. And even though the players are overrated, they somehow still play worse than their skill level. This has all the makings of a bad team. And it's a really unlikable team, because this is a team that should be better. It's a team that should know better. It's a team with a lot of big names who just act like they don't care. And that's the frustrating thing. It's really frustrating to lose when you have young players, but if young players show spirit, at least you can take something from that. This is a team of old players that doesn't care. And these plays that I laid out, and these are just a handful of the plays, they were a microcosm of what this team is. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to the offensive side of the ball, because I think this game once again exposed some pretty clear problems with the Jets. They may have made a big trade for Davante Adams, but Davante Adams is not performing, and Davante Adams has not fixed the biggest problem in this offense. And I'll tell you what that problem is as we continue here on this postcast edition of Locked On Jets. Today's Locked On Jets postcast is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they constantly deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.89. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. This episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And look, I know we don't want to bet against the Jets. I know a lot of people won't do that, but the way this team looks, I don't think you can go wrong betting against the Jets. They're probably not going to be favored in many games going forward. I can't imagine they're going to be favored against the Indianapolis Colts this coming week. If they are, then I might go with the Colts. But FanDuel is the place to get in on the action to get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is a Locked On Jets postcast after a 31-6 embarrassment. The Jets were blown out by the Arizona Cardinals. They fall to 3-7 on the season. After every game, I give you like what the Jets need to do to make the playoffs. And I think we've kind of settled on 9-8 being enough to make the playoffs in the AFC. So I guess if you want to say they can go 6-1 and make the playoffs, then technically you're still right. But I think we know that this team is finished. I think we know that this team's not capable of playing good football for more than like 30 minutes at a time. And even then, it's a stretch. And there are lots of different reasons for that. I mean, we've laid out the talent level, we've laid out the effort level, we've laid out the coaching level, we've laid out, the players just not performing at the way they should. But there are real tangible problems with this football team. And I think the number one problem on this team might be its inability to make any big plays in the passing game. And last week's second half against Houston was an exception. And that was because Garrett Wilson made some unbelievable plays. He made the catch of the century on what was frankly a bad Aaron Rodgers throw. I mean, we've talked a lot about that throw. I don't think we've talked a lot about why it was such a great catch. Part of the reason it was such a great catch was it was a really lousy throw by Rodgers. And look, part of the reason the Jets cannot produce big plays in the passing game is Rodgers is afraid to get hit. And part of the reason Rodgers is afraid to get hit is his body can't hold up. And we saw once again, he goes to the once I heard in the first quarter that Rodgers was saying he's felt better than he has all season, I knew that was a warning sign because, Rodgers can't hold up. And there's a lot of bravado with Rodgers. So to me, that was a warning sign because that meant maybe he's not feeling so well. And of course, after a hit in this game, he went to the tent to be checked out, which I think is like the fourth time this year, he's had to be checked out by trainers after taking a big hit. Now he's bounced back. He's returned to the game every single time, but clearly not a guy who's showing much ability to hold up. And this inability to take a hit is tough on the team because he can't really throw the ball down the field. Until we got to garbage time, I think he had 3 deep passes all game. The Jets may have traded for Davante Adams. Davante Adams obviously is not making plays. Davante Adams' stats for this game were awful. I mean, if you look at the box score, you're not going to be impressed by what you saw from Davante Adams in this one. He only had he ended the game with 6 catches for 31 yards, and that actually vastly overstates how effective he was in this game because he did not have a catch until this game was over. His first catch came in the third quarter, and he ended up early in the third quarter. There was a ball he could have caught in the end zone that he did not come up with, but he's not showing any ability to beat coverages. He's not showing any ability to get open deep. In fact, if anything, he looks like he has no chemistry with Rodgers. Another play where there were a couple plays. There was one in the end zone on the Jets' first drive where, maybe it wasn't quite Adams' fault. I did not think he ran a great route on that one. And Rodgers threw the ball and Adams came down with it, but he was out of bounds. The second one was clearly a miscommunication. And the whole point I thought the whole point of trading for Adams was that he would be on the same page with Rodgers, but Adams turned a different way from where Rodgers was throwing the ball. He's outside of the second half last week. He made 2 plays against Houston in that second half, 2 big plays, one that converted to 4th down and one that turned into a touchdown. But in 4 weeks, Adams has done next to nothing other than those plays. And it was a quiet week from Garrett Wilson. But, this Jets offense can't produce big plays. And, at halftime, Jeff Ulbrich praised the offense in his interview with the sideline reporter. And on some level, I guess I understand because the Jets did score twice in their 3 drives in the first half. They put together a field goal drive that lasted 11 plays on their first series, and then another field goal drive that lasted 12 plays. So you could say like, okay, those were good drives, but to me, like that shows you that they can't produce any big plays because if it takes 11, 12 plays to score, it means that you're not getting the 20, 30-yard plays. And that's tough because for any offense in this league, no matter how skilled you are, and the Jets are not the most skilled offense in the league, but for any offense in this league, it's tough to execute 11, 12 straight plays. Eventually, someone's going to make a mistake. And the Jets, both instances, the mistake came in the, close to scoring range where on a third down play, Devontae Adams did not come up with a ball maybe he could have come up with. Certainly on the second one, maybe not the first one, but definitely the second one. It speaks to the bigger issues that if you're not able to produce big plays in the passing game, you're going to be very limited in what you can do on offense. Because the Jets actually ran the ball pretty well in the early stages of this game. Breece Hall in particular, but Braylon Allen also broke some nice runs. And yeah, the Jets were able to hit a couple short passes, but eventually you got to hit the big play. Eventually you got to hit the long ball. And the Jets are not able to. And that's part of the reason, Aaron Rodgers leaves this game averaging 4.3 yards per attempt. It's not so much that it's not so much that he can't complete passes. He completed 22 of 35 in this game, so that's not awful. It's just there's no ability to make plays down the field. And that really limits what you can do on offense. Now, inability to stop a team at all on defense limits what you can do in that regard. So this is essentially a team with a bad offense and a bad defense. And that's how you get to 3-7. This may have been a team with Super Bowl ambitions before the season, but if we're going to be honest right now, that was never going to happen. I think we can now see that this team was deeply, deeply flawed. I think we're seeing right now that we're getting the worst case scenario. I think if you had concerns before the start of the season, they were about coaching. They were about, will old guys continue to produce at the same level? Will we see any regression from old guys? Unfortunately, we've seen all of the above. We've seen, and it starts at the quarterback, but it goes deeper than that. This is a team that's very, very little you can say that's good about it right now. It is a dreadful situation right now for the New York Jets. It doesn't seem like it's going to get any better. Anyway, that's all for this postcast edition of Locked On Jets. Please tune into tomorrow's episode. We'll continue talking about the New York Jets. We'll break down this game against the Arizona Cardinals even further. Until then, again, I'm your host, John B. from ganggreenNation.com. Enjoy your Sunday. Again, we'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.